Good afternoon, my listeners, and I welcome all of you to our classes. Today, we shall discuss what is an account at first, and then how to determine the debit and credit of each account. In general, an account is a summarized form of a transaction, and account is generally in the T form. It has two sides, debit and credit. Now we shall discuss how can we determine the debit and credit from a given transaction. Actually, there are two worldwide accepted procedures or the system for the determination of the debit and credit. One is the American approach. You can see it here. I wrote it in the board for you and for your note down and for your reference also. And another is the British or double entry approach. By these two methods or two systems, we can determine the debit and credit from a given transaction. At first, we shall discuss the American approach. In the American approach, you can see there are five items. One is the asset, another is the liabilities, third is the capital, fourth is the expenses, and fifth is the incomes. In the case of the assets, that is if the transaction is connected or related with the purchase or sale of an asset, in that case, if the value of the assets increases in a business, then that asset account will be debited, and if the value of the assets decreases by sale by the business, then it will be credited. Similarly, if the liability value is increased in a business, it will be credit, and if the liability value decreases, it will be debited. The third point is the capital. When the capital of the business increases, then it is being credited, and when the capital value is decreases, it is being debited. Similarly, in the case of the expenses, if expenses incurred by a business increased, then it will be debit, and if the value or the amount of the expenses decrease, then it will be credit. Similarly, in the case of the incomes, if the income increases, the income account will be credited, and if the income decreases, the income account will be debited. Now we shall discuss, this is the summarized form I have discussed before you, and now we shall discuss through some examples how this approach or how these methods or the systems will apply in the practical accounting procedure. Take the assets. At the side of the right hand side of the asset, debit and credit, I wrote bought furniture for rupees 1000 from X Limited. Bought furniture for rupees 1000 from X Limited. I understand that suppose you could not able to see it properly in your screen, but when you will enlarge it after looking at the video, I think you will understand what is the total contents given in the book for your purpose and for our discussions. Again, I am coming back to our discussion. Bought furniture for rupees 1000 from X Limited. At first, we shall determine what are the two accounts connected with this particular transaction. You can see that with this particular transaction, two accounts are connected. One is the furniture account and another is the X Limited account in our business. Naturally, as we are maintaining the books of accounts for our business in which the furniture has been bought, that is why when the furniture is coming in our business and we are buying the furniture, naturally in the books of the business, the value of the furniture is increasing. So as per our rule, when the value of the assets increases, it will be debited. So when the value of the furniture is increasing, the furniture account will be debited. Now the next account is X Limited. X Limited, we are understanding that X Limited is actually the person or the supplier to whom we have to pay the money, means we are liable to pay the amount of the furniture which has been bought on credit to X limited. So naturally to the X limited our liability is increasing. Our liability is increasing to X limited, whereas the value of the furniture is increasing in our business. As per liabilities rule, when the value of the liability increases, it is being credited. So therefore, as the value of our liability to X limited is being increased, therefore the X limited will be credited. So our ultimate journal for increase of the value of the furniture account is debited. For increase of the liability towards the X limited, it will be credited. So natural journal entry as per this American approach will be furniture account debit to X limited rupees 1000 each. Let us come to the capital account. I gave an example, started business with capital rupees 10,000. We have determined there are two accounts connected with these transactions. One is the cash account and another is the capital account. Cash account is the asset, you know, and capital account is itself coming within the rule of the capital. So when we have started the business, naturally cash is coming is the business, cash is the asset. So naturally cash account will be debited. And as per the rule of the capital, we know when the capital increases or capital comes into the new business, naturally it will be credited. So as per the rule, these two rules, the rule of the asset and the rule of the capital, the journal entry for our second transactions will be cash account debit to capital account. Let us come for the example of the expenses. Paid wages rupees 500. So there are two parties or the two accounts are connected with these transactions of the paid wages rupees 500. One is the wages account and another is the cash account. Naturally, when the expenses increases, the expenses account will be debited. So naturally wages account will be debited. And cash account is an asset. I have already told you. When the asset decreases, it will be credited. So naturally cash account will be credited. So as per the rule of our American approach, our journal entry will be wages account debit to cash account, wages account for expenses increase as cash account for the decrease of the asset. Let us come the last item, incomes. As per the rule of the incomes, when income increases, it is credited, and when income decreases, it is debited. We have taken an example, received rent rupees 1000. Two parties or two accounts are connected. One is the cash account and another is the rent account. Cash account, already we know that it is an asset. So when we are receiving the cash, naturally the asset named cash is increasing. That is why cash account should be debit. And rent, it is an income, and by way of the rent our incomes are increasing, so that is why rent account will be credited. So our ultimate journal will be cash account debit to rent account, rupees 1000 each. I am now summarizing the whole things again. If the assets of a business increases, the assets account will be debit. If the assets is decreases, the assets account, particular assets account, whatever its name may be, land and building, machinery, plant and machinery, furniture, etc., etc. Whatever they, or it may be the current assets also, it may be the cash, it may be the stock, it may be the debtors, whatever the name we may call it, or according to the nature of the transaction. So naturally, when the assets are decreasing, the particular assets account will be credited. Similarly, when the liability increases, particular liability account will be credited, as we have credited the X limited account, and if the particular liability decreases, it will be debited. Similarly, if the capital comes in the business or the amount of the capital increases in the business, the particular capital account will be credited, and if the capital is withdrawn or capital is being eroded or somehow the drawings has been made, in that case the capital account will be decreased, and in that particular case it will be debited. In the case of the expenses, always the amount of expenses, if it is increased, that expenses account will debit, and if the amount of the expenses decrease, particular expenses account will be credited. If the amount of our income increase, particular income account will be credited, and if the particular amount is decreased, it will be debited. I think I could able to explain within my capacity how to determine the debit and credit under the American approach. In the next class, we shall discuss how we can able to determine the debit and credit under the British method or our traditional double entry system of the method. Thank you for joining with me.